Some things just make sense. And other things are confusing. For me, being John Malkovich is number one on that list of things that just boggles my mind.
Who the fuck is John Malkovich?
Being John Malkovich is a cult classic film from 1999. It was the first feature film for writer Charlie Kaufman, who later went on to write Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, an adaptation, and director Spike Jonze, who directed Her, adaptation also, and Weezer's Buddy Holly music video. Despite having fairly fresh creatives, the movie was nominated for Best Screenplay and Best Director in the 2000s Academy Awards. A quick note, I'm about to go on to describe the plot of the movie, so spoiler alert.
There's a tiny door in my office, Maxine. It's a portal, and it takes you inside John Malkovich.
The film follows a disillusioned and unemployed puppeteer named Craig Schwartz, played by John Cusack. He's in a tired marriage with animal rescuer Lottie, who has turned their house into a zoo, with their main pet being a chimp who wears a diaper and sleeps in their bed at night. Craig answers a classified ad to file documents for a strange company on the 7th and a half floor of an office building.
Do you know why our workplace has such low ceilings?
There, he finds a tiny door that acts as a portal into actor John Malkovich's mind.
And then after about 15 minutes, you're spit out into a ditch on the side of the New Jersey Turnpike.
And falls in love with his incredibly intense co-worker named Maxine. We later learn that this door to Malkovich exists so that Craig's boss, Mr. Lester, and a bunch of other Centurions can climb inside Malkovich's brain when Malkovich turns 40 so that they can basically live forever through his body.
You can be John Malkovich.
I know that's not the perfect description of this movie, but I think it sufficiently captures how odd it is. Now, with all of that being said, I'm going to tell you about a game I like to play. It's called Why Did They Do This? To play this game, you watch a show or a film or whatever and try to figure out how someone came up with what you're seeing. For years, I've been trying to play this game for being John Malkovich to no avail.
He's been having me locked in the cage with my chip hunting a gun in my head.
God.
He made me call you.
Like, who in their right mind can come up with any of this stuff, let alone put it together in a competent screenplay? However, as I fell down the rabbit hole of Charlie Kaufman interviews trying to empirically decipher this puzzle, I realized that the behind the scenes and making of this movie was also kind of interesting. So today I'm going to share my internet journey with you and try to answer why and how Kaufman came up with being John Malkovich. So to start, let's get in our metaphorical / real time machines, depending on what year you're watching this video, to visit baby Charlie Kaufman back in the late 80s, early 90s, when he was writing television sitcoms like The Dana Carvey Show or The Edge. At the time, Kaufman had a writing partner named Paul Proch. Now, they didn't work on any sitcoms specifically, but they did write a couple of screenplays and some pilots that never got produced. Between sitcom writing gigs, Kaufman decided to split from his writing duo and go solo. It wasn't that he didn't enjoy having the partnership or that he didn't like Proch, because he did. Actually, Proch went on to be the artist for Joel's sketchbook in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But Kaufman wanted to start exploring more personal subjects on his own. Now, while being in full creative control seems alluring and liberating, working by yourself can be a little bit isolating and difficult considering you can't bounce ideas off another person, especially if you're a writer.
Listen, I really don't find this amusing. Don't call here anymore, okay?
To fix that problem, Kaufman decided to collaborate with himself, which essentially culminated in taking two disjointed ideas, smushing them together, and trying to get them to work in one screenplay. The practice of connecting two unconnectable ideas was to keep him on his toes. You might not know where the story's going, but you have a lot more options of paths that it could take. The unrelated ideas he chose were 1, a man falls in love with someone who isn't his wife, and 2, finding a portal into actor John Malkovich's head. And very specifically John Malkovich. It couldn't just be a rando or some other Malkovich. Why? Well, it certainly wasn't because Kaufman and Malkovich were friends, because Malkovich didn't even know Kaufman existed. Kaufman just thought it was funny and that saying Malkovich a bunch of times in a row was satisfying, which I totally get. Malkovich, 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 Malkovich. Hello? Tomorrow at, 12? I'm not gonna pick up tomorrow at 12. Kaufman finished the script in 1994 on spec, which is shorthand for speculative script. A speculative script is something that a writer writes for free without being asked to do it or without being commissioned because they either want to sell it to a production company to make it into a movie, or they want to use it as a writing sample for themselves. Kaufman was more on the sample side of that equation. He didn't expect for it to get made, which is probably the right mindset to have considering that the script got him a ton of work and meetings, but nobody wanted to make it considering how absurd and out there the story was.
And they were allowed. because I raise issues.
Nobody wanted to make it until Spike Jonze came along. What everyone else saw as a logistical nightmare and crazy idea, he saw as a masterpiece that was just crazy enough to work. Previously, Jones had only directed commercials and music videos, so this was going to be his foray into big-time motion pictures. But a director and a writer does not a movie make. Now they needed a producer and a John Malkovich. Kaufman and Jones were originally in talks with New Line Cinemas to get the film off the ground. However, New Line dropped the project because of how adamant Kaufman and Jones were about having Malkovich as the host body. The production company wondered why they couldn't just pick another actor that was more popular at the time, like Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise. Why did it have to be about a crazy-eyed thespian that was only a heartthrob for the oddest of teenagers? The riskiest thing about this movie is that whether or not it got made was dependent on the yes or no of a man that didn't even know the script existed.
It's my head, Schwartz. It's my head.
Kaufman and Jones were trying to think of other actors that could possibly replace Malkovich if, God forbid, he said no. But they couldn't think of anyone better.
It's just a matter of practice. Before Malkovich is nothing more than another puppet hanging next to my work table.
It wouldn't just be nice if Malkovich signed on. It was imperative. Thankfully, or luckily I should say, Spike Jonze was engaged to Sofia Coppola, the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola. And a little reminder about who Francis Ford Coppola was, just in case you forgot. He directed little-known films like Bram Stoker's Dracula, or Apocalypse Now, or all the Godfathers.
You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather.
Jones talked to Papa Coppola, who talked Malkovich into reading the script. Malkovich loved the piece, but surprisingly didn't want to act in it. He thought it might come across as conceited if he played himself in a movie where his name is the title, featuring a scene with just a million of him in a restaurant. Instead, he offered to direct or produce it, but as you can probably guess, that was not gonna happen. Eventually, Malkovich gave in, figuring that if the movie was going to be as good as the screenplay, he was willing to take the risk to be a part of something that could be potentially great.
Once we all get the courage to just follow through on our instincts like Malkovich has, I think that a lot of us will move into puppetry.
Now, I don't need to explain how John Cusack got involved because he's not really important to this story, but since he was the reason I watched the movie, because I had a huge crush on him back when I was 16, I figured, why not talk about him for my 16-year-old self? Cusack had gone to his agents and asked for the most crazy and unproducible script they had, and they gave him Being John Malkovich. And Cusack, being a lot more artsy and weird than people give him credit for, was immediately in. So that's the superficial why and how of Being John Malkovich. But I don't think it answers the question I sought out to answer. Why and how Kaufman came up with Being John Malkovich. It doesn't really explain the portal into Malkovich's mind or all the other seemingly random details.
Which of these two letters comes first, this one or this one?
Like the elderly taking over people's bodies to live forever. Floor 7.5, a half a step above God's number 7. Cameron Diaz owning all the animals, or the puppets in general. Reading, watching, and researching interviews for this video got me thinking about who Kaufman is. And based on the information I've collected, I've come to believe that these weird add-ons and story points are ways for Kaufman to examine the concept of control. The quest for control is something that pops up fairly regularly in his movies. Whether it's about creative control and adaptation, or control over memory in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or control over your own life in Being John Malkovich.
So if Craig can control Malkovich, and I can control Craig.
Maxine!
It also rears its head a lot in Kaufman's life when you consider how strong-willed he was leading up to and making Being John Malkovich. Breaking off from his writing partner and going solo, being adamant that Malkovich would be the host body or the movie wasn't going to get made.
I like the idea of it, of having that kind of ultimate control.
And much like Kaufman, John Cusack's character in the film, Craig, also has this uncompromising latch on his creativity.
Nobody's looking for a puppeteer in today's wintry economic climate.
It kind of feels like Kaufman's trying to reflect himself and his own attempts to gain control, while also being wildly insecure and anxious. Something that both the writer of this film and the anti-hero struggle with.
I need you for this, Craigie. You're my man on the inside.
You need me? I'm your man?
I think we try to be experts because we're scared. We don't want to feel foolish or worthless. We want power because power is a great disguise.
Kaufman's low self-esteem becomes apparent when you look at how he talks or what he says. Like how during his 2011 BAFTA speech he said,
I even feel odd calling myself a writer or a screenwriter. I do when I have to. I put it on my income tax form. But I feel like it's a lie.
or how during an interview with IndieWire he expressed that he blew it career-wise by not taking advantage of the momentum of his earlier films, despite the fact that he's still a powerhouse. Being John Malkovich, with all its weirdness and quirkiness, is possibly a portal for Kaufman to work through the idea that complete control over your own life or other people isn't real control and won't make you happy.
Because consciousness is a terrible curse.
Real control isn't dictating how or what gets done, it's the ability to be secure in yourself and the confidence that comes from it. Whether it's Lottie, who devoted her life to helping animals, Maxine, who is just unreasonably self-assured, Malkovich, who has a strong sense of who he is and what he wants, or Mr. Lester, Craig's boss, who is secure in his age and his insecurities. The one character that isn't content with himself is Craig, or John Cusack's character, or our portal into Charlie Kaufman's mind.
Art always tells the truth, even when it's lying.
Craig strives to be a famous puppeteer, another thing that can possibly represent control, resents other people that have made it, and really wants to be John Malkovich. Not to live longer or for love, like Mr. Lester or Lottie to some extent, but to be someone different and have power over another person.
You see, it's the idea of being inside someone else's skin and seeing what they see and feeling what they feel.
Yikes.
Kaufman was quoted as saying in the book, Kaufman Confessions of an Original Mind, a lot of the overall concept of the film comes from the idea of not wanting to be yourself and being envious of other people. There is for sure the idea of looking out in the world and feeling you don't deserve to be there. I took each character and on an instinctive level explored how they would react to that anxiety. By the end of the movie, each character has come to grips with that and has found happiness in something, except Craig. In the end, he decides to live inside the mind of Maxine and Malkovich's child so he can covertly pine over his object of affection, who is in a healthy and committed relationship with his ex-wife.
Maxine, I love you, Maxine.
Maybe the reason Kaufman came up with the idea of a portal into a celebrity's head can be seen within the quote I just read you. The rich and famous seem like they have everything figured out with their glamorous lives. Being able to embody and control someone like that may offer an easier and alternative path to happiness over actual self-development.
If I leave Malkovich, then I'm Craig Schwartz again. No career, no money.
Especially for a lowly puppeteer. Or writer. Or maybe I'm wrong about all this. Maybe Kaufman didn't write Being John Malkovich to explore the ideas of control and self-assurance. Kaufman has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't have all the answers and he doesn't pretend to.
And if there's one thing that characterizes my writing, is that I always start from that realization.
His movies aren't to teach lessons, but rather to act as a Rorschach test for the audience to see what they want. So let's go back to the question that prompted this video. How and why did Kaufman come up with Being John Malkovich? The answer to how could be that it just made sense in some way, and the answer to why could be to make the audience think. And if that was Kaufman's goal, then this movie, being nonsensical, makes all the sense in the world.
Hey, Malkovich, think fast!
And that's my video analyzing a movie from 1999. Side note, I just got Patreon, so if you guys want to support my channel or me, you can do so at the link in the description. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.